Some weeks feel more concentrated than others, in part because some weeks are more emotionally taxing than others. For we who love Israel, this was a very difficult week. It's hard to believe that just this week, Sunday was Mother's Day, when all felt quiet, focused on our own families. Monday, Yom Yerushalayim, the day that marks the anniversary of Israel asserting control over all of Jerusalem, was celebrated and violence broke out. In the Palestinian community, Yom Yerushalayim has another day. It's called Nakba, the day, they would say, of their devastation. Normally, Yom Yerushalayim is a tense day because for those who are in the Old City, and there's traditionally a march through the Old City, there is the feeling of the tension of the other side, that one people's victory is the defeat of the other. I think of the events this week as a conflagration. We who live in Southern California know of the risks of fire. When the dry soil leads to dry plants, and there's enough of that tinder, it doesn't take much of a spark to create a fire. And as we know, once that fire begins to spread through our hills, you never know how much damage will occur. And right now, I stand, as we all do, watching the evening news, reading the paper throughout the day, aware that this is a fire fueled, sadly, by hate. It's only natural and right that we who are Jews, who look to Israel as our homeland, will begin with the identification to, I could be there. I too could be hearing those sirens go off that would lead me into a bunker, a safe room. And in watching some of those safe rooms this week on the evening news, like on the NBC News last night, the reporter who was reporting from Tel Aviv all of a sudden heard the sirens and was among the last to go into the bomb shelter. And as he continued to report, he identified how many in that room, closely crowded together, were crying. For even in Tel Aviv, with all the wars, it's still and should still be jarring and fear-making to hear those sirens and to know that, yes, people are being injured by missiles being fired from Hamas, from the Gaza. And people have died this week as those hundreds that have now reached into the thousands of missiles indiscriminately. Indiscriminate is not really the right word, because indeed it's not haphazard. The goal is to cause as much damage as possible, to take out as many lives, regardless of age, of those on the other side, to create terror. And so a starting point has to be, there is terror this last week in Israel. I see, watching the news, how often the news gets reported differently from channel to channel, depending in part on who the reporter is. I once had here at CBI an important Israeli reporter. His beat for the Israeli newspaper, Haaretz, was to report on, we can choose our terms, the West Bank, Judea and Shomron. He would later become the writer for Fauda. But he was here at CBI speaking to a group of rabbis at a lunch sponsored by AIPAC before Fauda had come out. And he said, there are people who criticize Israel as not being very good at PR. He said, it's not true. We've done a very good job at PR. Here's the problem. Most people's attention span is very limited. What do people know about China and Taiwan? What do people know about most places in the world is superficial. And he said it's not dissimilar in terms of reporting on Israel. All people look at is a photo, and the photo in their mind is Israel is powerful and the Palestinians are weak. And when you look at that photo of powerful and weak, you're going to side with the weak. That's how it often is. Most people, he said, don't have the time or the patience to look at the video, to see where the still photo comes from, to understand how even a weak party can be a terrorist party. I paused to think of September 11th, not for the event, but for the outcome of the event. In that tragic day of September 11, 2001, when America was attacked, that began a war that is 20 years later continuing. Because once a terrorist attack occurs, it takes a lot to respond. When I listen to comedian news people talk about, I don't want to know, this was literally heard, I don't want to know all the facts. Such a person said this week on a popular TV show, I just look at the numbers. How many Palestinians have been killed and how few Israelis have been killed, and I see that this is not fair. Well, I'm speechless to know that that's not how you judge what is fair. How not fair. How you judge the complexity of right and wrong and the need for dignity of all peoples. And so I want to honor our love of Israel as Jews, as our homeland, knowing that many Jews are afraid to even speak out about it because it does not look good, and because when you enter into the political dimension of supporting an Israeli government, it gets complicated. I'm keeping one eye on the clock because there's a lot to say. And so where it leads to is Lu Yehi. If only, as Naomi Shemer sang, there would be peace. I had this awareness this week as I was teaching Psalms, that for 2,000 years we were a people in exile. And we read our playbook of prayers, of Psalms, in which we longed for Zion. And because we longed for Zion, we returned, and we have a miracle of a nation of Israel. But sadly, I hear of many Jews and non-Jews say there will never be peace in Israel. And I thought as I was teaching Psalms this week, aware of mobs, and that is one of the great and distinctive tragedies of this last week, is yes, Jewish youth attacking somebody who appears as an Arab or celebrating as the Temple Mount is in flames. And as well, Arab youth attacking Jews who are defenseless on the streets of Israel. A civil war, a city like Lud where 4 synagogues were firebombed. That is a dimension of uncivil unrest that leaves me shaken. And so there is a lot of hatred on both sides, a lot of fear on both sides, a lot of indignation on both sides, and a darkness that we as Jews need to know there is always a ray of light and a prayer. It was the Psalms that gave us hope of Zion, and it is those same Psalms that speak of a time of peace. And unless we, as Jews, even more so now, hold on to the focus of we need to believe that there can be peace, Lu Yehi, if only there can be. A song written decades ago in Israel brings all the more true this week. And so as Carl sings Lu Yehi, I hear it as prayer, that not everything is fair. Frankly and fortunately, Israel is strong. Am Yisrael Chai, we have survived. And this too we will overcome. But overcoming is more than stilling the hatred. Overcoming is the fulfillment of our collective dream. Lu Yehi, if only there could be peace.
Against a black cloud in the distance, see a white sail like a dream. Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. And in the evening windows, let it be for joy that candles gleam. Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana. Lu Yehi, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana. Lu Yehi, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. And should the sun break through the darkness, starlight stream from skies above, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. Give life again to dreams of peace, and ease the hearts of those we love, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana. Lu Yehi, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi. Lu Yehi, Lu Yehi, Ana. Lu Yehi, Kol shenevakesh, Lu Yehi.
Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, you who created this world, clearly seek peace. Seek each of your children to see the dignity, your reflection in each other. May we so move toward peace. Amen.
Amen.